from the heart of Dubai, where tomorrow is being built today, to the world. Welcome to the CTO Show with Mehmet. Here, we redefine technology and reimagine possibilities. With Mehmet, delve into the riveting realms of AI, cybersecurity, and digital technology. Experience the thrilling highs and lows of startups. Immerse yourself in the spirit of entrepreneurship and witness the future of business innovation being written in real time. Now, without further ado, let's tune in and explore the future.
Hello and welcome back to a new episode of the CTO Show with Mehmet. Today I'm very pleased joining me, Lars Maaløe, co-founder and CTO of Corti.ai. Lars, thank you very much for being here with me today. The way I love to do it, the audience knows it by now, is I keep it to my guests to introduce themselves, tell us a bit more about you, your journey, and what you're currently up to. And then we're going to start the conversation from there. Teaser, and I think it's not hard to guess, we're going to talk about AI, but this time we're going to focus more on healthcare and everything around it. So the floor is yours, Lars.
Yeah, thank you so much. And just to interrupt me if I'm speaking for too long here in my introduction. I am from Scandinavia, so we're known to be quite humble in nature. So hopefully not for too long at least.
That's fine.
Background within machine learning. I have been researching quite a lot in methodology within machine learning. And my PhD thesis was around generative models before it got so world famous here, and I had to sit around a lot of dinner tables informing people about what generative AI was, and was seeing a lot of rolling eyes around the dinner tables, thinking like you could see people were thinking like this will never be a thing. So apparently my pitch was not good enough, because when ChatGPT broke out, those same family members and so forth came to me and said, "Was that what you researched then?" And I could only say yes. So I've been researching within generative models for images, text, and so forth, from starting from the early 10s here, and fell in love with deep learning from the get-go, because I think it's so amazing what you can build with these deep generative models, and how modularized it is for all of the use cases. Then I got into starting a healthcare startup. I'm a firm believer. So my family are either engineers or doctors or nurses. So basically I had two paths here. First and foremost, get an engineering degree, start researching within engineering, and then focus on healthcare, because I think it's the most meaningful field to focus on. And I found that there are so many pains within healthcare today. There are so much administrative burden, and there's so much of a higher demand on healthcare today. And if I could just be a small piece of building a technology that could help within healthcare, I would be proud of myself. So I've been on that path since 2016, where we have built on machine learning models, deep generative models, machine learning infrastructure for healthcare. And now we are at the point where we are in so many different healthcare encounters all across the world, and are making a meaningful change in the everyday, which makes me super, super proud.
Great. And again, thank you very much, Lars, for being here with me today. Just, a question which I didn't prepare, honestly, because you mentioned about telling family members about generative AI and all this. And being in this field for long, long time, was it something you expected to appear in that moment, when, of course, the model, I mean the GPT, as people, they know Chat GPT, but I mean the transformer models and all this was quite before December or November 2023 or 22, sorry. But were you expecting that by that year probably, or like by that time frame, this is where it's gonna go to the mass, or was like something surprising also for you?
It wasn't surprising, right? The attention is all you need paper came out in 2018, and the real breakthrough within LLMs was much later. So I think that it has been like, for the ones that have been within the field, it didn't come as a surprise. It has been it's been a steady increase. I can tell you about the presentations from Joshua Bengio in 2012, where he said like, now the curve is broken in terms of speech recognition. And then again in 2016, when Deep Speech 2 came out, and then we all talked about now the curve has been broken in terms of speech recognition and so forth. And the same story is in image recognition and all of that. We've seen these steady improvements, and they have been quite amazing every time here. I think that the big change is more of the familiarity within AI, where we can see more and more people are getting more and more familiar with it because they're using it in their everyday. They're not just using it as a part of Google search when they were going into Google search engine or Google Translate and stuff like that. Now they're actively talking with an LLM, and that has been resulting in an immense mind shift. And I think that mind shift we're really utilized because that makes all of our customers now know what to expect from AI. They have a better grasp on how to formulate what they believe that they would love to build on an infrastructure like ours. So it has made the sales dialogue much easier.
Yeah, indeed, absolutely. Now let's go to healthcare, where you specialize, and Corti is built all around that. So you talk usually about explainability, AI explainability, and trust, especially when it's we talk about healthcare. We discussed it many times. Healthcare is a little bit sensitive because there's the privacy factor over there. But how you define AI explainability and how in practice that looks like in real medical setting, I would say.
Yeah, I think first and foremost, for choosing an infrastructure like ours, first and foremost, you can build some quite fantastic demos on OpenAI or Anthropic and all of that. But when you need to get things into production, then you learn about all of the quirks that happens when you just plug into the OpenAI API or the likes here. And I think that what we are seeing in terms of an infrastructure like ours is that it needs to be able to live up to a lot of standards within healthcare. First and foremost, it needs to all of the models. You need full traceability in terms of when you call something. Then we need to be able to log all of your calls, such that you know exactly what happened in the belly of the beast here, so that you can also trace if something wrong happened. Then you can go and find out why and then optimize that for later. Then secondly, you need to ensure that you can have a validation of the accuracy of the models. For instance, if you log into OpenAI today, it's really, really difficult to find out how well GPT-4o or whatever model that you're calling from OpenAI is actually performing within the healthcare domain that you want to call. First of all, that's not compliant with the regulations and all of that. So you would need an infrastructure that can actually prove the accuracy towards certain standards. And thereby you can also feel safe about bringing that to a patient or a clinician out there. So when you talk about explainability, a lot of people are referring to the fact that you need to be able to, when you have a prediction within a model, then you need to go back from the prediction into the input, and then you need to point at what input had the effect on the prediction. We have a lot of capabilities in terms of explainability, and we're researching and publishing a lot on that topic. And the methodology changes depending on what piece of the system that you want explainability for. So, for instance, for the large language models that needs to predict an output, we have these alignment models where you can use them for finding out what in the input was the biggest effect on that output. We also have the explainability features for the models themselves, where you can go in and find out what had the largest effects inside the model in itself, and you can use that to try to explain the input-output correlation.
So, that's good. And, you were talking about, the model and explaining the model. Now, what about the performance, like performance and maybe trying to do the interpretability also as well? Like, is there like something related to the accuracy? Like, did you choose the model for that use case? It's better than doing it for that other use case. Like, if you can just give us like some hints about that, Lars.
Yeah, so our customers use our API for a lot of different things, from providing ambient documentation solutions to providing information retrieval solutions for the medical domain and so forth, or to build questionnaire agents that can have direct conversations with the patients. And we keep on validating performance benchmarks across our solution, and we keep on publishing around that. So, for instance, our speech recognition, if we don't know what's being said inside the dialogue, or if we cannot accurately understand that, which, by the way, can be really, really complex within the medical domain because there are so much of vocabulary that is not used in the everyday speech. There are so many Latin words, there are so many medication names and so on. So you quickly get up to a vocabulary of 100,000 plus terms that the speech recognition model needs to be able to validate. We constantly, across our languages, validate our speech recognition capabilities and that accuracy. And we use everything from word error rates to character rates to Liebenstein distance and so forth. And we also use embedding models to make good assessments of how our internal models work and all of that. For text generation models, we also do a lot of research on that, and a lot of it you can find online, and you can find it published. Where we use, especially, I think one of the more interesting domains is using a model as a judge. So you use a third-party LLM to judge your capabilities here, and you can then use a suite of third-party LLMs to judge your capabilities in terms of text generation. That is very similar to OpenAI's medical benchmark for agents, and that's a good segue to how we also validate our agents, where we are validating the responses of the agents and all of that in terms of we have these lab environments where we do that at scale. And then at the end of the day, of course, we're using the feedback from the clinicians out there when they're finding some occurrences of misrecognitions, misrepresentations, and stuff like that. We get that direct feedback through our API, and then we can optimize and we can train. And we constantly train new models there. So yeah, that's a bread and butter thing.
Cool. You just said you take the feedback from the clinicians, like, you explain also how the model works for them. Do you think like we need also to explain that to the patient as well, or like it doesn't make sense?
I think so. Back to what I started out saying in terms of the education around using machine learning has gotten broader and broader. So what we see more and more are actually patients that are expecting that there is a machine learning model helping and assisting the clinician out there in the practice
Right.
counter. I think that where if you asked 4 or 5 years ago, then this would be a real topic in terms of whether the patient was properly advised and all of that. And I think that back to the fact that all patients need to be advised by the clinician, but I think the change of the game is in fact that the patient want the clinician to use some AI-enabled tools. And similar to me, when I'm at the doctor with my kids, I want to ensure that the clinician is actually using all of the tools at their disposal. Well knowingly that the clinician is still very, very much in charge of the decision making, but why not get some help from the tools at their hand?
Yeah, of course. That I know. Even sometimes if I have something, the doctor, just for a normal visit, I would expect them that they have double checked, maybe using one of the LLMs. Um, Now let's talk about regulations a little bit, Lars. So especially, in some part of the world, regulators are racing to catch up with AI, and they want to make sure, which is of course understandable, that we're not like misusing AI. How you ensure that whatever you use meet or exceed even the compliance standards in markets like because of course like in the US we have the HIPAA, and in Europe we have something else, and maybe different parts in the world they will have other things. Um, s- like what are like some of the things you do first for regulators, and do you see they have a tough job actually, because like today we talk about something, tomorrow is something else, and we have like breakthroughs now, very very fast paced. So your point of view on this?
Yeah, I think it was so. Back to let me just go one step back and say like, what is the reason why people buy from us as an AI infrastructure for healthcare? First and foremost, they seek us for getting a higher accuracy within the machine learning models for healthcare. Then secondly, they seek us because we make it much easier to build an application for healthcare. So we have solved all of the documentation automatically. We have solved all of the speech recognition. We have solved all of the agentic behavior that you would normally need within the use cases for healthcare. So you can basically get started on building your application in a matter of minutes, and then you can get done with the first prototype in a matter of hours. Then thirdly, towards your question on regulatory affairs here, we have made our solution and our infrastructure compliant to regulations both in Europe and the US and the UK and soon to come a lot of other countries in the rest of the world that we're very excited about publishing. And in order to live up to the regulatory standards, you need to build the infrastructure in a compliant way such that you can deploy your services, such that you can deploy the services in terms of segregated data and also in respect of different customers and their requirements and whatnot. That is easier said than done, and it's something that the big tech companies are not living up to. So of course that's a competitive advantage in terms of the regulators and whether they have a hard time on ensuring that they catch up to all of the development. I actually think that that a lot of the regulators have thought quite long and hard about how to make the AI Act regulations in Europe or the GDPR regulations or the MDR or the MDD and so on regulations that the UK centers are based on. In a way where it's future proof to a certain level. I can come with a lot of examples where it's not completely future proof. However, but I think that in the broad strokes, the regulators have done a good job on ensuring that an innovator like us can actually scale. As long as we build our infrastructure in a compliant way. And just to note, we talk about regulatory affairs so much, but we should also be aware that there is a lot of misuse of data out there, patient data, etc. So it's from a
Right.
patient perspective, it's really good that we have these regulatory affairs in place, and that there are people that are thinking long and hard about traceability in terms of access to the data and not misusing access to patient data and so on. So I think that I'm pro the current level of regulations, maybe also because we are actually compliant. But yes, it is a tough job to ensure compliance and ensure that you keep on moving with the regulatory affairs, and we're doing our best.
Absolutely, and this is good to know, of course. Yeah, so regulations are there for for a reason, indeed. Now, one thing, just because you service, your main thing that you sell is the API for healthcare. Now, um, how are you seeing, from now, because you deal with a lot of clients, I'm sure. But I'm more interested in startups in the healthcare domain. What are like some of the trends you're seeing, maybe overall, directions that going with? Because, with healthcare, again, because it's highly regulated, entry is hard. So I've talked to a lot of founders. I talked even to investors in this space. And, there's an era before AI and the era after AI. But now there's kind of divergence of what can be done, for healthcare with AI. So from your point of view, again, what are you seeing some of the main things that are promising and, attracting also your attention as someone also who comes also from a technology background, and you have your PhD actually in machine learning?
Yeah, I think it's a wonderful question. In the fear of forgetting some of our customers, just to at broad strokes here define the different types of application builders that we're seeing built on our infrastructure, or even technology builders. Like it doesn't have to be specifically applications; it can also be another infrastructure that they're building on top of ours. We're seeing everything from applications that want to alleviate the administrative burden, and that's, for instance, ambient scribes. Where if you check the ambient scribe market of the startups in the ambient scribe category, that is when a patient and a doctor have a consultation, and then you have this microphone on, and then you automatically write the clinical documentation for the doctor or clinician or whomever here. And there are approximately 100 plus ambient scribe startups out there and counting. And you see more and more of them starting to specialize. Like healthcare is a big market. So you see some of them
Right.
are specializing on nurse documentation, and some of them are specializing on psychiatry documentation. Others are specializing on bedside nursing. So there's no into the specialization reach. And we're seeing it all on our platform. So that's the administrative burden part. Then you also have the in the same like kind of avenue, you have all of the startups that are building into the revenue cycle management regime of healthcare. So basically making sure that that the healthcare provider is getting paid for the services that they provide. And that can be complex within healthcare because patients that there could be a lot wrong with the patient, etc. And you have a lot of documentation that is unstructured and to a certain level structured, but a lot of it is unstructured. And then you need to code that. You need to assign clinical codes, made from a coding database of 140,000 different codes, and you can have different combinations. So basically, creating an invoice in healthcare is complex, and it's not just in the US; it's also around Europe and the rest of the world.
Yes.
And you have all of those startups that are focusing on that. Now that you talked about the startup ecosystem here, then you have all of the startups that are focusing on full automation. So building agents, for instance, in the patient engagement, telephone agents, where you call your general practitioner, where you want an agent that is asking you about the top priority questions about the acuity level and so on, and basically back to that, a triaging you so that you can come into the right queue of the clinician, to hospital intake agents or form building agents and so on, or pre-charting agents that are looking at all the EHR information and then compiling that with the intake information in order to make the perfect pre-charting setting for the clinician. We see all of those companies and we see all of the startups, and there's a boom within healthcare because there are so many enablers right now where you see all of these startups building on an API infrastructure such as ours, and so that we have a 43 times growth here in terms of projects started on our API infrastructure since going live with that at the end of January. We are having immense success in the current API capabilities, and at the end of the year, without promising too much, we will have a doubling in our capabilities coming out very, very soon on our infrastructure. We're in private beta, so we're quite excited about that. So, and a lot of fuel for all of those applications out there. And then you have all the incumbents as well, all of the software vendors that have been building on healthcare for a long period. So, and that's the health record systems, the radiology information systems, and so on. All of those systems, they all are building new AI capabilities enabled on speech, text generation, agents, and so on. So,
yeah, healthcare is a very vast and big market, and a lot of things that still need to be fixed using AI. Indeed. Now, one thing also that happens, and it's not, I dealt as a technology consultant in some part of my career, and when it comes, to talking to healthcare organizations, um, doing pilot is not easy, right? So there's a lot of moving parts. But now we talk about adopting AI and moving fast. So what do you think, like, some of the biggest mindset shifts that need to happen to be able, to move quick, like to take something from a pilot and then to put it into production at a very large scale?
yeah, I think it's a good question. I think there is a misconception sometimes on saying like healthcare is by definition slow and all of that. I think that if the need is big enough, then you will see enough need for growing fast and implementing something, right? If it becomes more and more mission critical, then I can assure you that healthcare is one of the fastest moving markets out there. And the current strain on healthcare is making some of these AI solutions extremely mission critical. For instance, like there is a severe doctor burnout and nurse burnout for that matter here at the provider, and maybe even the nurse burnout is bigger than the doctor. So I'm sorry for not mentioning that as the first priority, because they have so much work on their hands, and it doesn't look like it's going to change in the next foreseeable future because we're lacking so many clinicians out there. So, and we get more and more elderly population that has more needs. We have more complex things that could be wrong with us, which is fortunate for all of us because that means that we're living younger or longer and fuller lives here without getting into the Brian Johnson moment. But we are definitely getting older. And so I think that there is a severe need for assisting all of these clinicians out there. It's not about taking their jobs or anything like that, where that could be the AI conversation 10 years back. And now it's about getting those additional hands on solving some of the administrative needs out there so the clinicians can do what they do best, or helping them out on pointing out some things that could be worth noting with the patient in a pre-charting moment before the clinician is meeting them, such that they don't have to meet them again the next day after, but they can actually get solved what is needed in that consultation where they have 7 minutes to use, right? So there's a need, and that means that there's a lot of pressure from the market to actually get these technologies in. The big providers, they all have an AI strategy, and it's not just fluffy AI, it's tangible value propositions that need to get solved.
Cool. What about the readiness? So yeah, so there's the willingness to move fast. There is what about readiness? Because again, yeah. So I might say in any domain, yeah, I want to adopt AI. I see the benefits. I heard it like from few people that I'm not sure about healthcare. That's why I'm asking you, Lars. They go there and they figure out like, yeah, there's still some work to be done actually before we start, implementing and building the AI infrastructure and building application around it. So, and there are like some of the stuff that needs to happen, not related to technology indeed. So maybe some new roles, maybe at some time shift in the culture. I would love to hear your opinion and what you've seen working also in that space.
Yeah, thank you. So readiness in terms of infrastructure is, of course, a topic, right? If your virtual communications infrastructure is not ready to adopt new technologies in terms of implementing live AI assistants and all of that, true. There is a readiness problem always when you talk about big industries that they can be a slight bit slower in moving towards the newest technologies. However, there is always right now, given the pressure, there is always a form factor to present and implement these technologies in healthcare. To give you some examples here,
Sure.
if you in your intake process have a difficulty because your system right now in terms of your patient intake, so your patient intake is quite an important process, right? Because that's where you find out how to admit the patient towards your system. And if you're doing wrong there, it can at the worst of days it can be have a gruesome outcome here. If you're and if you're just not treating the patient at the right service level, but not doing something directly wrong, then you end up costing the patient and the system from a lot of software and a lot of money and time. In terms of patient intake, based on where the system is and what it's based on and all of that, the technology can have an adoption curve that is slower. However, what we see a lot of the healthcare providers doing right now, that they're thinking outside of the box. Then they're asking about how can we make an online patient portal that is actually replacing our phone intake infrastructure, or at least supplementing it, and can we actually channel some of the volume to that online process, while we also update our voice-enabled infrastructure for the new age, so that we can also introduce AI-assisted voice agents for the ones that don't like a written interface or an online interface. So there's a lot of willingness to move and act and try to stay flexible because the need is so big.
Cool. Now, beyond just out of curiosity, beyond providing the infrastructure and the of course the APIs, because we talked a little bit about the agents and what they can do. Any interest in touching that domain, Lars, and maybe building? Of course, like we cannot build something that works for everyone, but probably maybe kind of templates of agent that me as a healthcare provider or maybe a startup, whatever, I can follow these templates to build something useful for me. Of course, I still need to give my requirements to that because agentic AI is, again, now everyone talks about it, but what I discovered, few people knows how to implement it. So probably they need this push, right? Or they need that help. Any plans on that?
Yeah, so right now you can see our API as providing agents for instance, adaptation burden or extracting clinical findings from a voice dialogue or just a piece of clinical text. What you will also see on our platform are real agents that can solve real like use cases within healthcare, for instance, pre-charting, or for instance, like clinical information research based on a patient's patient case, or taking actions based on, for instance, a patient dialogue. So we have an application we're providing right now that is building an application that is taking the pre-charting, it's taking the historical information about a patient, then it's taking the live information about a patient in order to generate this live recommendation engine towards the doctor sitting there at the heat of the moment, based on clinical guidelines, clinical research, and so on, where it can go in and say, based on the clinical research and the patient context and all of that, and based on what you ask the patients, you might consider asking this and that question because that relates to research X and Y over here, for the future case here. Those kind of recommendation engines you can basically build on our templates within our in our API infrastructure and get it up and running really, really fast. And it's also completely flexible. You can define your own system prompts around it. You can define your own tools that you want to use. You can generate an MCP around it, so you can also use other data sources for building your agents. So real flexibility in terms of building whatever crazy agent idea you have. And then on top of that, back to the traceability, the explainability. The need here is to make sure that that you log everything that we do from the agent perspective and all of that, and you can trace it.
Yeah, absolutely. It's good. And I ask on a purpose so you can explain to the audience who might be interested in that also as well. Now, on just very quickly, and maybe I should have asked this before. Of course, you provide this for any one of your customers to have it, in a sovereign cloud, right? So it's not like the public cloud. How much do you see this as important? And our customers, some of them, because maybe they would not have themselves, the ability to run the infrastructure themselves. I mean, from hardware perspective and so on, going as they don't have other choice to the public cloud, like one of the big hyperscalers, or no, when it comes to healthcare, it's always no, like it should be ours. The data stays with us.
No.
What do you
So
see?
there's a lot of flexibility within the market in terms of deployment options, and we're providing them all. So we're providing it on the big tech incumbents cloud services, and we're providing it on your own infrastructure. So we
Mm-hmm.
can basically push all of our infrastructure into whatever setting that you have. Hence the sovereign cloud dialogue. We are also on more on smaller cloud provider infrastructures and all of that. So there is a large push for the market to make sure that that they stay flexible in terms of this.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not just the European providers, given the European politics and all of that are
Of
interested in
course.
this. It's also the big healthcare providers in the US. They all have these requirements. And the requirements are truthful also in terms of cybersecurity risks, in terms of disaster recovery rules and all of that. They need to make sure that they have the uptime needed for all of these infrastructures, and they cannot just rely on one server side or server center in the western part of the US. They need to be able to have redundancy and whatnot. And then they also, a lot of them have requirements towards investing in cloud services, as we probably all know that are listening to this show. The cloud services are not super inexpensive. So we are all in the game of making sure that that everyone gets the cheapest hardware price out there. And there,
Right.
when you are a large consumer, because you have these large language models and all of that are consuming GPU resources, then you also want to make sure that your infrastructure can be deployed in a cost-effective manner.
Right. Um, Back to what's happening in general within the tech. Um, of course, there were some breakthroughs. You talked about that, but currently, what are like some of the you know exciting breakthroughs that you're seeing? I'm hearing a lot about the fully autonomous, like what they call it, the reinforcement learning, and how it's a lot of things happening in that space, shifting from supervised, semi-supervised learning also as well. Yeah, so just for the folks, I'm not expert. I took like some courses back in the days, so this is where I know the terms. But of course, I would ask Lars, like, really something that you're expecting to do, you know, as big noise as we saw when the first LLMs started to appear. So what's happening in that space?
Yeah, I think so. The ability to reason for building proper reasoning, it is quite fantastic. I think that's one of the things, and the fact that you can optimize the reasoning paths with reinforcement learning is definitely also fantastic. I think that where I find just to go two steps back on machine learning and the state
Sure.
of the art right now is that um, as fantastic as the current model capabilities are, there is one big problem with these models, and that is that they will always give you an answer, even though the answer is wrong.
Mm-hmm.
We all have that uncle that will always give you an answer, and then when you grew a little bit older, then you found out that he was full of beep, right? I think that these LLMs, especially these general purpose LLMs, they're optimized with the reinforcement reward function of a lot of non-specialist people that are sitting there and saying, "I would rather have this output than another output," and all of that. So you will get a response that is far from always right. You see that also with the publications that are there. That you see more and more hallucinations. Also, given the fact that you want the models to be able to do more and more. So um, I think that when you look at the current space, what I'm the most excited about are these because it's completely fine to be wrong if you use an LM for a cooking recipe, right? Or it's annoying, but it's not life or death. Or if you use it
Right.
to automatically write your essay assignment for your school on the Monday because you forgot making your homework. That is just annoying for your grade, right? But if you go within healthcare, then you need to make sure that the system is reliable. And there, I think that what I'm the most excited about are uncertainty quantification of these models. So basically, make the models aware of their own deficiencies and also aware when they should not predict, or when they should report back to whomever is asking for an output and say, "I really don't know." That uncertainty quantification is important, and that's a field that I think is appreciated because it doesn't create big headline of an LM that is now able to finish exam X and Y better than other LMs, but it's probably the most impactful thing in terms of actually providing and building AI solutions that are scalable and reliable out there to the masses. Then I think that so uncertainty quantification is one of the things that I think is a highly researched topic, also from our perspective, like where there is still a lot of innovation height that needs to come in. And then the second thing I think is the capability of training these models in the unsupervised / self-supervised manner that is giving a company like ours so much scale, because we don't have to have these very expensive annotations and also these very
Mm-hmm.
error-prone annotations for all of our data, but we can actually get the models to learn their own representations. And with the right infrastructure and the right minds employed in a company like ours, you can gain so much value out of self-supervised learning. So I think that excites me a lot, because that means scale and that means covering more data.
Yeah, so like, it's like when I go to a doctor and he tells me or she tells me, "Hey, like this is not my area of expertise, but I can refer you to someone else." Like maybe at some stage, like one model would suggest maybe other models that they maybe have better knowledge in that. So which makes sense. And if like about death or life, indeed, yeah, to your point, like of course I tell people, because I've seen people sometimes, they maybe they have a pain or whatever, and they go and ask ChatGPT or any of. I said, guys, like, yeah, but don't rely 100% on the answer, because we never know. And just out of curiosity, Lars, because you mentioned something I noticed, and I tried to find answers, um, which is like the model with time. You said it start to behave in a weird manner. Is it because, and even and I don't mean within the same chat. We know, like, if you keep the chat going on, it will start to hallucinate more. But even with time, and this is why I had this theory that companies like OpenAI, this is why they are not doing much more publicly now, but every 3 months we were seeing like a new model, a new model, a new model, because I used it very heavily, and I figured out like after time either it becomes lazy, literally, it refused to do the job, or it start to yeah, like give short answers. Is there something like this really from of course a technology point of view?
Yeah, I think I don't know what their choices are. It might be that they have a cost efficiency measure where they're trying to not invest too much compute on each individual
Mm-hmm.
user. I could, if I were them, I would probably also think into that the massive computer needs and all of that. That would make sense of the shorter responses. I think that another thing that we see from these models, even though that the context window is advertised as being humongous, then
Yeah.
active context window, to in lack of better here that we can see from the general purpose models, it is really not impressive, especially when you talk into a domain specific topic
Mm.
like healthcare. That these models have a really difficult time on keeping all of this domain specific context. And from a machine learning person, it is not a big revelation. Of course, they have a difficulty on doing that. I think that we should all be aware of that. So that means that when you chuck in a big 1,000 pages long stock trading report or something like that, then you can definitely not expect the model to actually keep that context in, and it will give you an answer no matter what. So the analysis that you're then relying on, I would definitely question that even more than your family members that is asking ChatGPT of whether a cold should be a reason to go to the doctor or not. So the larger the context, the more complex the matter, and these large language models that are general purpose are not very specialized into all of the needs that large context.
Yeah, this is the disclaimer that we do to people, and this is where what you do, Lars, comes handy, because you are building specialized models for specific use cases, and it doesn't go beyond the knowledge that it has, which is all medical knowledge. So it's good. They also wake up call for people just to understand, and of course, I'm not saying like not everyone knows. It's good to remind. I remind myself. I have to remind myself like the general purpose models, they have all the data, including the garbage data of the internet. So I might get something which, completely nonsense or wrong. So 100%.
Yeah.
Lars, as we almost come to the end, any final thoughts, anything you want to share, and where people can get in touch?
I think basically just that there will be, and there are many more companies like us to come with these specialized fields, and there are so many specialized fields out there that needs and infrastructure like ours. I think that what I'm the most excited are all of the developers out there that are sitting there with an idea and feel that it's difficult to actually get started. We should hopefully make that easier. Like they can just get started on the on our from our website. They can sign up and get the API keys, and that they're basically up and running, and that they can build whatever prototype application on whatever vibe coding tool that they like and test their idea out. And we'd love to hear from all of these developers out there in terms of their crazy ideas or better ideas or whatever. We also throw a lot of hackathons and have started that like really getting more traction on those hackathons. And it's so fun. It's so energizing to see all of the ideas in order to actually empower a better healthcare system for the future. So reach out directly to me on LinkedIn or directly on my Corti email. You can share it afterwards as well, or directly through the website. We're responsive and we just love building.
Cool. Great. So I will make sure all the links are available in the show notes. So if the audience are listening on their favorite podcasting app, you'll find all the links in the show notes. If you're watching this on YouTube, you'll find that in the description. Lars, again, thank you very much for being here with me today. I know how much it can be busy, so thank you for giving us, the time. And this is how usually I end my episodes. This is for the audience. If you just discovered our podcast by luck, thank you for passing by. I hope you enjoyed. If you did so, give me a small favor. Subscribe, share it with your friends and colleagues who are available, as I said, on all podcasting applications and platforms and on YouTube. And if you are one of the people who are fans, loyal audience, thank you very much for all your support, all your feedback, questions, suggestions. I hear them and I read them all. So please keep them coming. And thank you for taking the CTO show with Mehmet this year to a new level by reaching top 200 charts in multiple countries at the same time. So I really appreciate this. It can't happen without you, the audience, and of course, my guests, including you, Lars. So thank you very much. And as I say always, stay tuned for a new episode very soon. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Hit that subscribe button, share the show with your tech-savvy friends and fellow entrepreneurs, and leave us a review on your favorite podcast app. Your support means the world to us.